In the previous episode, we talked extensively about vaccinations, why vaccine fails, what you need to know about vaccinations, and we talked about the crucial nature of vaccinating animals and the economic implications as well as health implications. Today, we are looking at small animal vaccinations. We need about 70% vaccination of the dog population in Ghana to call ourselves rabies free. Unfortunately, looking at the estimated population of dogs in Ghana, which is about 2.3 million, and our vaccination numbers, which is around 300 to 400,000 a year, we are nowhere close to this 70%.
Be responsible pet owners and follow the guidelines. Get your pets vaccinated.
Started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Vet Podcast, where we redefine veterinary medicine in Ghana. So, in our previous episode, we talked about vaccinations in general, and we promised that we will take time to now go into details concerning the different animals that we have in this country and the vaccination protocols for each of them. And so today we want to now do that for full promise. And so, Dr. Enim, what are we doing today?
So, like you mentioned, we are looking at vaccinations in animals in general. In the previous episode, we talked extensively about vaccinations, why vaccine fails, what you need to know about vaccinations, and we talked about the crucial nature of vaccinating animals and the economic implications as well as health implications it has on us. So feel free to check the previous episode. Today we are looking at small animal vaccinations. Now, when it comes to vaccinations, one of the things we mentioned in the previous episode was the fact that the different species of animals have various vaccine policies that guides them. Now, in Ghana, have we have a vaccine policy with regards to small animal, and mainly the ones that is known extensively is rabies, but still a lot of people don't even know. Some have no idea that they have to vaccinate their dogs and cats annually against rabies. And so today we are talking about these vaccines in small animals so we have a better appreciation about it. Now, when it comes to Ghana's vaccine policies, they are done to shape how we protect animals and ourselves and even the environment. Now, in Ghana, like I mentioned earlier, the main vaccine policy we have centers on rabies and other core diseases. When I say core, it means the diseases of concern, not just because it kills the animals, but it also has a potential to disrupt human life. One of the key things we find in Ghana's vaccine policies is that rabies is on our radar, is a disease that is endemic in the country, meaning the disease lives with us. And so we need to deal with it. For that matter, it is mandatory for all dogs and cats to be vaccinated against rabies. Now, most of the vaccines produced for rabies has a 3-year protection timeline. But because of how endemic the disease is, looking at the numbers, I've been reading a lot of research articles and papers with regards to the rabies situation we have in Ghana. And one of the key findings I'm making is we need about 70% vaccination of the dog population in Ghana to call ourselves rabies free. Unfortunately, looking at the estimated population of dogs in Ghana, which is about 2.3 million, and our vaccination numbers, which is around 300 to 400,000 a year, we are nowhere close to this 70%, meaning the disease burden. I mean, these are just data, but I just want you to have a better appreciation of it. Meaning the rabies disease burden we have in this country is high. And like we mentioned in the previous episode, for us to say an animal is protected, we need to know the vaccine titer. What I mean by vaccine titer, like I mentioned in the previous episode, is the amount of antibodies that the body produces to fight against the disease. Okay, we can't check that for all the dogs. In fact, even getting the dogs to vaccinate from their owners is a problem in and of itself, let alone catch them, do the titer, and doing the titer too is expensive.
Expensive, yeah.
So because of these reasons, these and other reasons, the policy is that every year we vaccinate the dogs to keep the vaccine titer up, to keep the antibody titer up. Having high antibody titers ensures that the animals are protected. And so that is what the policy says. For that reason, if you are listening to us on this episode and you have a dog and you have a cat, please try as much as possible to vaccinate this dog and cat. So, just as I mentioned, rabies is mandatory for dogs and cats because they are the primary sources of the virus entering into human populations and into other dog populations. So, if you have a dog or you have a cat, I advise you to get that dog or cat vaccinated. You are not only paying money because you are paying money for money's sake. No, you are vaccinating the dogs and cats to protect them from getting the disease and eventually protecting yourself from getting the disease. Like I mentioned in the previous episode and in some other videos that I did on my personal Instagram channel account, the rabies virus is not necessarily in the bite of the dog, it is in the saliva. So if I have a dog and I haven't vaccinated that particular dog against rabies, and the dog happens to have exposure or contact with another dog that has rabies, and that dog successfully gives my dog rabies, and I play with my dog, and the dog happens to lick my hand, and like I said, this morning when I was bathing, I felt some pain, sharp pain on my palm. Imagine this is a wound and my dog has rabies and it licks it. Automatically, the dog has deposited rabies into my wound. And eventually, I'll come down with rabies. And so this is not to scare you, but to let you know the burden of disease we have in the country and the need for you to do your annual rabies vaccination. Now that that is out of the way, let me go on to talk about other vaccinations that we do for dogs to protect them and us against diseases. I'll start with leptospirosis. Leptospirosis is a disease caused by a bacteria we call leptospira. It likes a lot of places in our body. Okay. But one of the key places they like to reside in is the kidneys and the liver. Now, we are all here talking about how expensive kidney transplant is and liver transplant is, and even you having to even travel outside of the country to have these surgical procedures. Over the past few years, these kidney problems have been surging up. I know leptospirosis is an occupational disease. Yes, I get that part. But aside it being occupational, we are having dogs and cats in our homes who are exposed to the various mouse and rats who are like the reservoirs of the disease, transmitting this particular disease. And so, if you have a dog, as much as possible, try and get them vaccinated. There's a multivalent or polyvalent vaccine available in the country, DHLPP.
Yeah.
Distemper, hepatitis, leptospirosis, parainfluenza, and then parvovirus. The World Small Animal Veterinary Association, in short, we say WASAVA, they publish an annual vaccination guideline for small animal vaccinations. They have other guidelines, but for small animal vaccinations, they publish something to guide how we vaccinate animals, small animals, particularly dogs and cats. Now, in last year's publication, they changed the status of leptospirosis from being a non-core vaccine to being a core vaccine in countries they consider the disease endemic. And the unfortunate thing for us is we have free roaming dogs exposed to anything and everything, and we can't ascertain whether who what they met, or the rats, the cats, or even the other dogs they met have these diseases. And so it is expedient we vaccinate these dogs and cats against leptospirosis. Now, distemper, hepatitis, parainfluenza, and parvo, they all have their own quirks. But I'll focus on parvo because it is one of the diseases that our breeders are really struggling with. And not just breeders, but even
Pet owners.
pet owners in general. Imagine getting a pet, a very beautiful pet, and in a matter of days, this particular pet is dead because it contracted a disease called parvovirus. This we will release a video on parvovirus, but let me just give you a gist. So, canine parvoviral enteritis, that is the name of the disease itself, caused by the parvovirus, happens when the dog gets exposed to the virus. The virus attacks the animal's the intestines, and makes it impossible for the animal to really eat anything. The, the animal begins to lose water, lose electrolytes, can't eat, neither can it hold water. Anything it eats, it passes out. This disease is very contagious, and so we need to protect our dogs from them. We vaccinate them as early as 6 weeks because by that time, like we mentioned in the previous video, the maternal antibodies might have waned, and then we continue administering the vaccine 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. In some instances, we go as high as 6 months and then 12 months to give the dog full coverage and protection against the disease. And so, canine parvovirus is one of the diseases you need to vaccinate your pets. Distemper is also another disease that affects dogs, and we have a vaccine for that. In some countries, it is called, but in Ghana, it's not really on our radar as a core vaccine. But fortunately for us, because we have the polyvalent vaccine, we do it all together. I mean, it's a 5-in-1 vaccine as one shot. So once you give that shot, you've actually given the dog all the five. And so these are the key dog vaccines we have in the country. Our policy in Ghana, like I mentioned earlier, is get your dogs and cats vaccinated against rabies. And then, since it's a recommendation, not just from Wasava, but even looking at the data that we have, we vaccinate against leptospirosis, and then distemper, hepatitis, and then canine parvovirus for our puppies and our small dogs, younger dogs, is also done. So this is a summary detail of small animal vaccinations as far as dogs are concerned. Dr. Abugri will take the various vaccines we have in cats, and then we will wrap up this episode.
Okay, so we have just looked at the vaccinations in dogs, and for many of us, we are not even aware that cats are vaccinated. I think some people assume that you only vaccinate dogs, and so usually you find very few people bringing their cats to be vaccinated. It's very rare. I only a few, but even they come it's just for rabies. So as you said, rabies vaccination is compulsory. It's not an more or less an option. The reason is that it's because of the fact that it is a fatal disease, also a legal issue. So that's why whenever a vet vaccinates your animal, they give you a pet book or some form of a certificate, the signature, and if that document is a legal document, so that whenever your animal bites someone or anything, the police will ask for it to prove that you have done your legal duty. And so if you assume that, well, you have a cat, you have a dog, you will not vaccinate the animal against rabies, you one day have an issue with the court and then you'll be fined. So don't be found wanting. We have already informed you. Now, for the cats, apart from the rabies vaccine that we give to them, we have another vaccine. It's also more or less a polyvalent vaccine. Um, it's not common, but it is done in Ghana here, and it's done for the protection of cats. I think it's called the FVRCP vaccine. So it's a combination of about three different vaccines in one to protect the cat against certain disease. One of the important diseases there is what we call the feline panleukopenia virus, and it's a virus that attacks cats. It's similar to parvo in dogs. So when the cats get it, you get bloody diarrhea, shortness of breath, they become weak and they die within some few hours. Sometimes within 12 hours, the cats will die, and so it's a very fatal disease for cats, and so you have to vaccinate against it. Then we have another one that is a feline um,
Calicivirus.
calicivirus. Thank you. So it's also another disease that affects the respiratory system of cats, and so it's I won't say COVID of cats, but it affects the respiratory system of cats, and then if they are not taken care of, they usually pass away, and so these vaccines are there because they are there to protect the cats from these diseases. Most of these viruses are only specific to cats, so they might not affect human beings, but they are for the welfare of the cats and for the survival of the cat. So if you are a pet owner and have a cat, it's advisable that when you go to the vet, you ask for the cat to be vaccinated against these diseases. Apart from the rabies, do the full vaccination so that your cat is protected. But for some of them, even after the cats have survived, like the calici virus of cats, even if they survive, there's chances that they will occur later on in life many times. As long as the cats are alive, it can keep reoccurring. And so just protect your cat from this. Just go for the vaccine and then you cover them for life. Yeah, as I said, it's supposed to be repeated annually. So that's a booster. So you go back annually to repeat the vaccine, and then your cat will be healthy too. That's just a brief summary of the vaccines we have in cats.
Yeah. So in this episode, we've talked about the main vaccines we have in both dogs and cats. Now, like Dr. Bugri mentioned, some have legal requirements and they have legal documents that are given to you, like rabies, as you mentioned. But let me go on to say this. We do these vaccines not just because we are vaccinating the pets against the diseases. Like I mentioned, we are also protecting ourselves, particularly from rabies and to leptospirosis. Not just yourself, but even the community that you live in, because should these dogs transmit the disease to the community, it's a human life that is going, and none of us want that. And so let's try as much as possible to vaccinate our pets. And like I mentioned earlier, with regards to the numbers on rabies, the more we have the numbers, the more we protect the community. Okay. In public health, Dr. Amprechun shared something very important with us called herd immunity.
Yeah.
Herd immunity is we have let me give this scenario. There are a lot more people in a particular population, say 10 people, 9 are vaccinated, only one is not vaccinated, or 8 are vaccinated, only 2 are not vaccinated. We can say there's herd immunity, at least a higher number of the population is vaccinated against the disease. So we can say the disease is kind of like clamped down in that particular community of people. If in the instance where fewer numbers are vaccinated, we don't have herd immunity, and in such an instance, if the disease happen to surface, a lot more people will come down with the disease. That is why we are advocating that as much as possible, get your dogs and your cats vaccinated against rabies. So let's protect the public and let's protect our pets.
So today's episode was just to introduce you to vaccinations in small animals, cats and dogs, and we hope that you've learned something and you realize that it's not only for your benefit but for the community. Be responsible pet owners and follow the guidelines. Get your pets vaccinated, and we'll see you in the next episode.